Hello, good morning and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Well, it's a beautiful Thursday morning from here in Lagos. I'm Kayode Okikulu. Welcome. You know, yesterday the EFCC launched that Eagle Eye application. And so here's the thing. I've downloaded it. But just before I tell you about that, I mean, just a little background to that. So you know that, I mean, corruption is a big deal anywhere in the world. And from the recent, statistics we've seen, the ratings, corruption perception, it's still a major challenge in Nigeria. I mean, the government came to power really because a lot of people wanted to fight corruption, insecurity, and of course fix the economy. So we're focusing on that corruption angle, at least for this period. So the EFCC tried to make it easier for Nigerians to report financial crimes, fraud, and the rest. So they came up with this idea. I mean, it's the, what do they call it now? Is it the jet age? It's not more the jet age now. It's
Information age.
Information age, right? So, I mean, everybody has their mobile phones. How about you just incorporate this whistleblowing process? Make it easy, make it very smart, so people don't have to travel all the way to EFCC offices just to report any financial crime. You could just take a picture, sort of like an eyewitness, like we have on Channels Television, sort of like, your own eyewitness. So it was launched, and I was quite curious to see how that works. So I downloaded the Eagle Eye application, which, like I said, the EFCC launched yesterday on my Play Store. And it's quite interesting the way it works. So you have the part where you could take a picture of a property or financial crime taking place, I guess, and then you upload that. You put your name. There's a place where you put your name, your number, your address, and of course the address of where that thing took place. So a few things stuck out for me. I was thinking of issues of privacy and security with that particular application. Well, the EFCC says this guarantees, security, your privacy, and the rest. So the EFCC is given its word on that one, and I think that's sorted. But I think the other side is the financial reward that comes with whistleblowing. I mean, it's a given, right? People want some sort of incentive, and a reporter reported that, this Eagle Eye does not come with that one. Is that a downer, really?
Well, no. If we look at, in the immediate, it would seem so. But if you look at the ripple effects of that, I mean, you are the one that read that story yesterday. What happened at the ports? 100 million naira daily expenses that shouldn't be spent by companies. And that's just one port.
Wow.
In one sector of Nigeria's economy. Just imagine what's happening in several other sectors. And so if that could be reported, and we're able to save at least 50, 60% of that, imagine the ripple effect on the prices of goods and services. Imagine how far-reaching that would be on sustainable infrastructure and all of that. So I think what one can say, for this one is that it's a good start. The question of sustainability for me is always an issue. How do we ensure that, one, this is multiplied in every other sector imaginable, and two, how do we ensure that it is sustained? It's technology, it's imperfect, but how do we sustain it? That's one question that's on my mind. And secondly is that of how far-reaching it is. There are several parts of Nigeria that these issues, it doesn't in any way remove from the ingenuity of the idea that the EFCC has come up with in reporting the crime of corruption, so to speak. But if we also factor all these other things in, the fact that in uploading you have to use data, and from what I gathered, it takes a lot more data to upload than it is to download. Or whether it's the reverse, I don't even know right.
Do these things matter when it comes to patriotism and the rest? It's
so when you consider that people buy data on a daily basis, I mean, they buy per day, especially in several parts of Nigeria where, poverty and inequality, so to speak, is quite rife. And then while we are talking about 4G in urban Nigeria, there are areas of Nigeria where there's still the still struggling with 2G, some even 1G. You know, so how quickly that will happen, how fast that will happen, those are the other things. And then you talked about privacy. Is there going to be a geolocation of where that thing is coming from on my app? Will the app be able to locate my location? And don't also forget that, you know, people have also accused the EFCC of certain EFCC officials of connivance. You know, will the people who blow the whistle be secure? Well, that is what the promise is. But really, maybe there is a need for those who know about technology to at least educate people on this so that everyone's mind is at peace. The EFCC has made a position. The EFCC has put this out. It's time for us to buy it and own it as a people.
So, I mean, first thing is, this should not be the end for the EFCC. I mean, it has been launched, but there's a lot of work to do, really, to ensure that people buy into this. Because I imagine the potential of this, it's huge.
Absolutely.
It's really huge, making it easy for people to report crimes, financial crimes. I mean, you just referenced that 100 million bribe and all that we see at the ports that was reported yesterday. So if this is properly communicated to the people, again, communication comes in, and I think a lot more people would buy in. So let us know what you think about the Eagle Eye idea. Is it something you would want to be a part of? I mean, you could send us mails on our email address on the screen. Let's know what you think about it.
By the way, Kade has downloaded it.
Oh yeah, so I'm looking for financial crime to report.
Well, I have downloaded. Interestingly, it's not only limited to Android, you know, those who are on the iOS. Wait a minute, is this some commercial for the... No, this is patriotism.
Patriotism.
This is patriotism. So, but it really is something that we all should, you know, find a way to encourage ourselves. No, it's not just limited to the public sector.
Yeah.
We talked about that one sector. I mean, that's 100 million daily. How many such cases do you have to encounter on a daily basis? And if you have even given it a try, you know, since, you know, the whole thing came out, what has been your experience? Let's hear it. Our email is right there on your screen right now. So, you can look at it.
Determined to eradicate corruption in Nigeria, the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, is fulfilling its promise of exploring modern technologies in the fight against economic and financial crimes. Developed by the Commission's ICT department, the Eagle Eye application is designed to enable members of the public take pictures of property suspected to have been fraudulently or corruptly acquired and report same to the Commission for necessary action.
Apart from complementing the existing channels of reporting economic crimes, the unique advantage of this application is that it eliminates direct person-to-person interface in the reporting process and guarantee anonymity, which is an added incentive to effective whistleblowing. With the Eagle Eye, you have at your fingertips a device that will ultimately ensure that there is no hiding place for corrupt persons in Nigeria.
The information to be provided by an informant includes pictures or videos of suspect or their assets, location details, description of the report and details of the informant, which are optional. According to EFCC, such information must be genuine, or else the bearer of any false information could face legal charges.
I guarantee you, anybody that is malicious, that have that malicious intent, will be dealt with, in accordance with the law. And that is why, in all our cases, we tend to carry out, a sort of covered kind of investigation.
The Eagle Eye application is available on Google and Apple Store. Unlike the whistleblower policy that comes with financial reward, the Eagle Eye app does not have financial reward. But the EFCC says it's a way of showing patriotism on the part of the citizens, as they will be part of the fight against corruption in Nigeria. The big challenge, however, is the reliability of the information that will come through the app. And that is what the EFCC must check. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
So let's take a look at some of the papers this morning. We'll start with the Nigerian Tribune, and this is what you have on the front page. Nigeria needs $100 billion yearly for 30 years to close infrastructure deficit. No less than AFDB is saying. That story is on page 6. And men, sincerely, if you look at the infrastructure deficit, it is quite huge. But one other thing that beats me about this whole infrastructure question is that there was an audit of physical infrastructure buildings by the Jonathan government and this government, and it runs into trillions of naira. And I'm wondering, and these are abandoned buildings, by the way.
Oh.
And I'm wondering, what are we going to do with these? But more of that, of course, you'll find on the page 6 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. That picture is of items retrieved from suspected criminals during the raids on hideouts in Lagos by the Commissioner of Police. And right above the nameplate, audit report. Senate asks NNPC, NPA, BPE, 56 others to refund how much? 300 billion naira. Stories on page 5.
You know, what baffles me is the fact that, we keep getting these reports with the alarming figures and I don't know, maybe ultimatums or not, but question is, what is being done about that?
Well, yes, we'll find out. Electoral Act, Senate reps to consider reports today. Stories on page 5. Upper Chamber recommends e-voting at INEC's discretion. Is that a may or a shall? Find the details on page 5. 8th Senate Health Security Summit. Saraki replies Buhari. The story is on page 5. That's the Nigerian Tribune this morning.
Take a look at Vanguard. Lead story, transmit polls results where feasible, Senate report. So yes, it's been a long time coming. That report has finally been laid before both chambers, by the way. And we're going to be giving you extensive coverage of what will go down at the National Assembly today. We're starting early, so just stay with Channels Television for coverage of that. Lobby lawmakers, don't blackmail NAS leadership, Lawan tells Nigerians. Says those accusing National Assembly leadership are rabble-rousers. All we want is a fair, just electoral law. That's a Afenifere. Nothing wrong with Lawan asking Nigerians to lobby their lawmakers, ACF. Let Senate make laws to make INEC truly independent, Ohaneze. There's no blackmail. Do what Nigerians want, Pandef tells NAS. Lawmakers will answer to Nigerians if they fail to do their bidding. Middle Belt Forum. So you have some of these social cultural groups across the nation weighing in on this one. Page 5 of the Vanguard should be an interesting one this morning. PIB, governors to engage NAS, NEC, back on bundling and commercialization of NNPC. So yes, you see those major bills that are, that have made the news and are still making the news. That's what the Vanguard is focusing on this morning. And you see Super TV CEO murder, police arrests more suspects. I mean, there's been so many twists and turns in this particular one. Page 6 has more details. And this COVID-19 story, Unilag shuts hostels indefinitely, says lecture will be virtual. LASU on alert. It's on page 30. And I had a student telling me recently about the master's program that the student was doing, saying that, the class was so packed that some people had to use, the floor to actually write on in the COVID era. And you'd expect that a lot of schools will transition to e-learning and the rest. And clearly some of the lecturers are even not really inclined to it because it's tricky. Mute your mic, turn off your video and all that. So it's a big one, and we need to ensure that we don't get a disaster on our hands. Quickly, sports.
I think this, my apologies, yeah. I think it just speaks to how seriously we consider education, sincerely. For God's sake, that's the master's program, not the first degree.
Masters.
As master's program, people sitting on floors. It only speaks to our rating of education, if you ask me.
Well, sports page, Australian boomers blow out Nigeria, 108 to 69. Doesn't matter. I mean, we beat the US, we beat Argentina. So I mean, we just got to give Australia this one, but that's Vanguard Sports this morning. Good morning, Markway.
Good morning. I don't know why this song just came to my head. If you ask me, now who I go ask? Well, Daily Trust is the paper I have for you this morning. Again, bandits, IPOB militia on the prowl. Kogi monarch abducted, businessman killed in Bauchi, 3 policemen, football club chair manager shot dead in Anambra, ESN kills 2 soldiers in Enugu, Katsina, Daura Emirates suspend Salah festivities, 6 persons kidnapped in Abuja. So the lead headline, stories in security, lots of stories in security as a riders from different parts of the country. But they summarize it on this one. Again, bandits, IPOB militia on the prowl. Pages 5 and 29 have details for you. Of course, the picture there, worth 1,000 words. So just in case you're wondering what that's about, villagers cook black engine oil after a tanker crashed at Manderegi community along Abuja-Lokoja Road. You also see the story, FEC approves 309.9 billion naira road contract for Dangote. That's also there on the front page. Yes, that was announced after the FEC meeting yesterday. National Assembly Committee empowers INEC to decide on e-transmission of results. Is that pushing the book? I don't know. But you might want to see details on page 10. And also stay tuned today to see what eventually passes at the National Assembly. Zamfara Assembly summons Deputy Governor CP over PDP rally. Federal government monetizes posting of police officers to private organizations. So it's a page 4 read. Don't forget that there has been some concern over the use of security officers, but look at this. Federal government monetizes posting of police officers to private organizations. Let's leave it there for Daily Trust.
Well, is that what you would call a long time coming? Added to the fact that if we don't have enough, and some people are talking about private security, I don't know. What do I know, really? The Daily Times newspaper this morning is looking at something very interesting. Other papers have carried it, but that's it right there in your face. Audit report, 59 MDAs to refund over 300 billion naira into FG coffers. Reps stop 44 Navy supplementary recruitment for violating federal character principle. Well, you know, we talk about this audit report every time. Which of the audit reports is this? Is it 2014, 2015, 2016? The last one that we heard that the Senate was talking about was the Auditor General's report of 2015. This is 2021. 2020, I don't think the 2020 Auditor General's report is ready, but if we're talking about this from 2015, how actionable is it? 300 billion naira over how many years now? Going to 6 years now. Yeah. And this is what we have. How this will be enforced, that will be really, really interesting. And right under the nameplate, you see the Daily Times going back in time there. I don't know what year that one is, but you'll probably take a look at it. A headline of the Daily Times from way back in time, many years ago, saying don't sacrifice merit for quota, and that right beside it saying 2023 jettisoning quota, embracing merit. How far so far? The details you find on the front page of the Daily Times newspaper this morning.
Next is The Guardian, and the big one is 40 days of Twitter ban. FG's projected tax earnings undermined by fewer users. Twitter unlikely to bend rules as losses reach 96 billion naira, says Teniola. SMEs contributing 48% to GDP worst hit by ban. That's according to a survey. So 40 days of Twitter ban, that's what the Guardian is focusing on today.
If it's not a lot more than that. If you look at those figures by it's a net blocks, it actually puts it well above $200 million already.
For some, it's been 40 days, 40 nights. So that one starts on the front page, continues on page 2 of the Guardian this morning. And there's this shocking one. Tuberculosis to claim 432 Nigerians daily.
Wow.
As COVID-19 deaths decrease. So if tuberculosis, I mean, we don't want this, but if it would claim 432 lives daily, I mean, that's beyond this pandemic.
Question then is, are we taking as affirmative an action for tuberculosis, for malaria, and so other deadly diseases as we have so far for COVID-19?
That's a big question. So you might want to understand the context of that story on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. Of course, that Unilag halls of residents being shot makes the front page. And gunmen abduct Kogi first-class chief and pharmacist behead 2 soldiers in Enugu. Page 13 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. That's the Guardian for you.
Well, let's take a look at what leadership has on the front page. Nigeria moves to tackle terrorists with robots. That's what they have there. 2 soldiers slain in Enugu community. Army fingers ESN. Bandits kill 6, abduct 5 in 3 states. Use of excessive force aggravating banditry. That's according to Gumi. Those living with bandits risk airstrikes. That's according to NAF. Well, don't forget that I think yesterday a story was reported that a woman and 2 children were killed in an airstrike. And it would seem that right now the Nigerian Air Force is warning that if you live with bandits, you risk suffering an airstrike or an airstrike. So I don't know how that's going to work, because there'll be questions as to if bandits have abducted people and we're trying to get those people out safely and also deal with the bandits, how do we go about it? I think that's been the biggest, trickiest question for the security agencies to answer. That's different from those who deliberately or willfully live with people who they know are criminals, who don't do anything honest and genuine for a living. But look at this one on the front page. Federal government okays 309 billion naira road contract tax credit for Dangote. That's also on the front page as well. Media bill not suspended, says Reps Committee. I did say that here. I did say I hope they were not relying on what the member said here on the program. I hope they were waiting to hear it on the floor. So now you can hear it on the front page this morning. Media bill not suspended, says Reps Committee. Look at this one too. PIB, governors query proposed ownership structure of NNPC. So many objections to that bill, which hasn't passed just yet. It's not been signed into law. It's been passed in the National Assembly, but is yet to be signed into law. Let's leave it there for leadership newspapers.
Very, very quickly, take a look at the Nigerian News Direct this morning, also talking about insecurity. Nigeria to deploy robots, artificial intelligence to fight criminals. That's according to the Senate. A number of people have been talking about drones and all of that. Is this part of the plan? The details you find on page 2 of the Nigerian News Direct this morning. That's it for the papers at this time. We're back to take on the issues for the day shortly. Please stay with us.
As we said from day one, we will bring the report to Mr. President for action on the recommendations. and he has graciously accepted, which he did even before the summit. And we are hopeful and believe that many of the recommendations, both the legislative and the executive, once implemented, will go a long way to resolving some of the issues, if not all, some of the issues that pervade our society in terms of security. We felt that it was time that we thought outside the box, that we begin to look at different ways as opposed to the traditional ways. And that's exactly what we did. At the summit, we invited experts, we invited all stakeholders, traditional rulers, just name it, deep thinkers, scholars, security experts, and it is the thoughts, particularly those that are not necessarily conventional, that we put together. And we believe that reading the reports, they will be implemented. We believe that they will be implemented. There are several recommendations we've agreed to establish, not commissions, zonal commissions in all the zones, like the Northeast Development Commission. We will have the Southwest, we'll have the South-South, we'll have the Southeast, we'll have the Northwest. And that it goes a long way in resolving issues, regional and zonal issues.
Well, indeed, the House of Representatives at some point had expressed great concern over the security situation in the country and decided that they were going to hold a security summit. That summit, you heard the speaker there telling us about those who were invited to that particular summit, even though not all the members said that they were carried along when the summit held. But eventually, the summit did hold, and then they have the reports from the summit. And just recently, this week, the Speaker of the House of Representatives submitted the report of the summit and their recommendations to the President. This morning, we hope to, take a look at some of the recommendations which they came up with and see and ask how practicable are the recommendations and how will they solve some of the security challenges currently befalling us. Don't forget that this morning on the front pages, you have seen some of the stories around security making the rounds. First-class traditional ruler was kidnapped in Kogi just yesterday. Some people were also killed somewhere in the east in Enugu. This week as well, we saw the emir in a town in Kaduna State, abducted alongside 13 members of his family. Thankfully, the emir has since gained his own freedom, but members of his families continue to remain in custody. So these are some of the issues that are currently, dealing with the country. Will these recommendations help solve some of the problem? We have with us this morning Honorable Yusuf Gagdi, who is the Chairman, House Committee on Navy. Honorable, you're welcome to Sunrise Zenith this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Let's just start with this one. I'm sure that, after were you a part, let me ask you this. I think this is very important because we had spoken to a few more of your members who said, oh, we're not carried along. I take it for granted that you were carried along in the summit that was held and you followed fully the recommendations that were eventually reached. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Are you surprised, though, that some of your members say that, they didn't know they didn't know much about the summit? They knew a summit was holding, but they didn't really know much about it.
I'm surprised that a member of the House of Representatives will claim that he's not aware of the security summit organized by the leadership of the 9th House of Representatives. And why I'm surprised is because, one, the primary function of a parliament, of government, is to provide for the security and welfare of the citizenry. And the power to make laws is donated to the parliament to make law for peace, order, and good governance. And if it is a summit, it's not something that is supposed to be discussed on the floor of the House, that 360 members should partake. Definitely representation should be chosen. You don't expect a summit to be conducted by the number of the parliament we have in the House of Representatives, 360 members to be part of the summit. It would have just been a matter that would have been brought up on the floor of the House to allow for open discussion among members. But be that as it may, it is called summit, because representation of head of security committees and other relevant stakeholders, relevant members of relevant security committees are picked so that genuine discussion could be conducted between the House of Representatives representation as well as the stakeholders that are invited for the summit. So if they say they are not aware, they have right to say
not
that.
They were not aware. I mean, I did pose that question. They said, oh, we're aware. We were not invited. So, I mean, they didn't really know what was happening at the summit. That's what they said.
If you are conducting a summit, unity summit or whatever summit for the people of Nigeria, you don't invite all Nigerians to be present in the summit. You choose representation based on geopolitical composition. So if your leaders in your geopolitical zones are called for that summit, I think they should go back and brief the other members from those geopolitical zones what happened in the summit and what are the resolutions that are taken during the
Did the geopolitical zones choose their own leaders, or the leaders were chosen for them?
Automatically, there are leaders of geopolitical zones in the National Assembly. Of North Central, North South, Northwest, including all the southern, the 6 geopolitical zones. You need to choose each of the geopolitical zones.
Well, I'm pretty sure that conversation will continue in a bit. Just needed to deal with that. But right now we have with us also on the same subject matter, Colonel Hassan Stanlabo, who is a former army officer. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks so much.
Well, I know you're not part of the legalese, so to speak, but some of the things that emanated from the committee, the conference, the summit of the House of Reps on security. I'm pretty sure that you have a hold of some of them. Which of those recommendations or resolutions would you say stand out for you?
Well, first and foremost, the one that talked about putting it in my own words, we're seeking assistance. Okay? And that's the one that's referring to the PMC's private military companies. In whatever form, it's all assistance that we're talking about here.
But some would wonder, I mean, why is that a way of saying that we are unable or incapable of handling our own issue?
Well, in my own case, better put, it's a way of we saying, let's accept the reality on ground. And what's the reality on ground? We are overwhelmed. We seem not to be able to meet with the situation on ground. Our military needs some fixing in itself, and we cannot do that at the same time while fighting this war. Can we seek external assistance, see how we execute this war? When we are done with, we put our military in place. I'm saying our military needs some fixing. I'm not just saying that from the blues. Okay, I'm talking like somebody who has actually participated with this same military, and I know what the Nigerian army, and when I say army now, I'm using that in a generic term. I know what the Nigerian military is capable of. However, a lot has gone on wrong, which we all need to really sit down and fix. We cannot combine that fixing exercise with executing this war because we are in a haste to do away with this war.
You know, looking at that particular provision, because I know the conversation has been on for a while, it says specifically to give immediate, now this is for the executive, by the way, you know, it's broken down into the legislative action and the executive action. This one says particularly, give immediate consideration to the use of private defense contractors for targeted security operations to combat insurgency and terrorism especially. I know the talk has been about, you know, having policemen go with VIPs or accompany goods and all that. That should not happen. So there's been a lot of talk about having private security handle maybe VIP security or accompanying goods. But this is particularly for insurgency and terrorism. And it talks about private defense contractors. That's mercenaries, right?
Yes, of course, that's the external assistance we are talking about.
So this is not from Nigeria, this is from outside Nigeria?
No, it's not from within, because let's face it, I run a security company, but statutorily we are not allowed to bear arms. So what role are you going to play in the Northeast? So automatically you'll be knocked off until the relevant law books are visited and you are empowered to carry arms and so on. and all the necessary things that should go along with it. So invariably, we are knocked off. But I'm always saying that I belong to that group that feel, look, I think we need some external assistance. We are losing Nigerians on a daily basis. Only on Sunday, way back in my village, Zango Kataf, I know what happened. It's already going viral now in the social media. Okay? Killings and so on and all sorts of things. We can't keep going on this way, except if you're not feeling the pinch.
But there are those who also think that, engaging mercenaries might make us vulnerable as a nation.
In what sense?
I don't know. I mean, you tell me.
Good.
There are those who feel that, look, if you invite mercenaries, into the system, we will have to definitely give them certain information, which, might make us vulnerable.
Look, my brother, we are a sovereign nation. If we are bringing in mercenaries, we work out the rules of the game that will be abided with between us. Okay? And about the issue of we being vulnerable because some level of your classified information will be given out. Are you telling me that all the foreign missions in this country, in fact, even the information some of these countries have about you, use as a citizen, don't even have them? What are we talking about? Look, let's call a spade a spade. Okay? There are certain things which you cannot help but to compromise and get certain things done.
So, the Honorable was talking about representation across, geopolitical zones, and I think it's quite important because what you face in your geopolitical zone will be clearly different from what is being faced in another person's geopolitical zone, right. Which is why it's important to have at least representation from those areas so they can chip in and say, well, maybe mercenaries will work for you because you're facing terrorism and insurgency, but maybe what might work for me is suppression, what's happening in the area, maybe farmers, herders issues or, intercommunal clashes and the rest. For your area, because you mentioned Zango Kataf, and that's, what is trending on social media is really sad. Looking at those recommendations, do you see anything that addresses the particular things you face in your geopolitical zone?
I would probably say the introduction of technology into the battle space. By now, I expect that some level of aerial assets should have been introduced and used by our own military. And by that, let me just say I'm referring to things like drones and so on, or even CCTV cameras. Let's take drones. There are drones with surveillance capability and engagement capability. There are drones that can be there up in the air, okay, and be able to carry out surveillance for kilometers far off and pass information to you. Okay? There are drones which, if deployed in a place like Bada, will be able to avail some level of surveillance and even engagement capability for troops in places like Masari, in places like Kukua, in places like, you mentioned it, there are lots of, Ateke, and so on. All right? The point I'm trying to make is that deploying some of these drones in some of these areas would be able to help the manpower situation we have on ground. Because manpower is a very serious issue. Not just in the military, but it cuts across the entire national security sector. Both the military, paramilitary, and what have you, all suffer from manpower issues. For reasons which, sincerely, if you ask me, I find it difficult to explain in a country that has over 200 million Nigerians.
On that, are you comforted with the position of the Senate that the Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy had established a center where artificial intelligence and robots would be deployed to fight crime and criminality in Nigeria?
Of course, why not? That is the technology we are talking about. Bring in some level of technology. Because if you look at what's this deployment we have in the Northeast, super camps. The gaps between the super camps, some are just damn so wide, such that if you have some level of technology deployed like drones, it will be able to bridge up the gaps, by virtue of the information they'll be able to pass on to you and so on. All right, they'll be able to even engage on armed non-state actors within such unprotected areas.
And with precision.
With some high level of precision. It's used everywhere. Most advanced armies are engaged in it. I wonder why something is still dragging us back.
As you said, well, maybe this is a start, but there is a lot more on this matter as we started in Abuja with Mawbe.
Thank you, Ayo. Yes, we still have with us Honorable Yusuf Gagji, and somehow that just went up. But just before we went, we're about to delve into the recommendations. I'll quickly head right to it and read some of the recommendations which have come out in the press. One of them says, instruct the immediate enhanced training for the police mobile unit to improve their capacity to deal with insecurity. A special team of 40,000 police mobile unit officers should undergo this special training. 1,000 should then be deployed to every state for immediate operations. Northeast, Southwest, Southeast can receive the officers remaining out of the 40,000 police officers. Now, 40,000, that's the number you're recommending. The first question will be, do we already have 40,000? Are you asking that we recruit more into the police mobile force unit? And how quickly do you think that can happen?
Well, the statistic of mobile police strength will be determined by the police authority themselves. But as a lawmaker, I think I am familiar with the Police Act, being the sole sponsor of 2020 Police Act that is in existence. I know a lot of issues regarding to manpower requirement, not only for police force, but even other security agencies and intelligence committee, which we have been advocating. I'm quite aware of a problem between the Police Service Commission and the police itself that led to legal litigation, which suffocated issue of recruitment for the past 2 years in the police force, that they have never been recruited, being that the power to recruit, is it vested on the Inspector General and the police force or the Police Service Commission? I'm aware of that. But be that as it may, the position of the stakeholders based on the security summit require this volume of mobile police force, require training and retraining of the police force, looking at the emerging security situation that keep on propping up from 4 angles of the country. So if they have that requirement, they should go ahead and do the needful as recommended by the House of Representatives. But if they do not have, we must equally go back to the drawing board and sort out the issue of legal matter between the Police Service Commission and the Nigerian Police Force toward arrogating whose power is to recruit within the Nigerian police. I know, before I even recommend that we should go back to the drawing board, bill sponsored by me to amend the Police Service Commission Act is equally in place in the House of Representatives, so that clear lacunas, legal lacunas, misinterpretation of legal framework provided by the House of Representatives will be addressed, as well as giving whoever agencies the power to discharge its duty without any interagency rivalry, which is one of the recommendations of the committee. And when we get there, I will be able to talk about it.
You also want a new team to be created under the Nigeria Police Force to train and work with the guards of Nigeria's forest. The unit will collaborate with the current forest guards who will remain under the control of states. That's one of the things you're recommending. And you also want to encourage intelligence agencies working with the NSA and the Chief of Defense Staff to initiate a screening and vetting program of all frontline officers of the Nigerian military to fish out moles and double agents who have so far compromised most efforts at combating insecurity and win the war against insurgents and terrorists.
Yes.
Now, how easy is this one going to be, to fish out moles and double agents?
You see, this summit has a multidimensional approach. One, the one that goes to the public gear toward the presentation of report by Right Honorable Femi Bajabiamila to Mr. President. The other segment of it is what are the aspects of the security summit that is supposed to be implemented by the House of Representatives or the National Assembly itself. Yesterday, about 5-6 bills, I want to link it to what you are saying, came up on the floor of the House. For second reading, debate were conducted on those bills, because you cannot take responsibility of securing the defect in our security architect without amending the legal framework that establishes those security agencies. We have 6 bills. One, We are talking about the Armed Forces Act, which passed through second reading yesterday. I'm the co-sponsor of the Armed Forces Act. Even the Police Act that was passed by the National Assembly, signed by Mr. President on the 15th of September 2020, was equally pushed for amendment to address what? To address community policing issue, where intelligence should be able to be the responsibility of the police force itself, as well as the community, the people.
So what you're moving to now is you're trying to delineate which one, who has what responsibility.
Definitely.
Yeah, there were some definitely for members of the House, or for the legislature, and there were some for the executive arm. The one that you have, the one I've just read out now, is meant for the executive, it's meant for the military. You oversee the Committee on Navy.
Yeah.
How easy do you think it will be for these people to be able to conduct a screening to see if their people, if frontline officers are double agents? How easy is that going to be?
One, you look at the sub-agencies under the agency you supervise. Like any armed force have its own intelligence department. How do you strengthen them to ensure that monitoring of officers among themselves to fish out those double agents that are suffocating the responsibility in terms of the discharge of their functions are fished out? You do that by conducting robust oversight engagement with the agencies you superintend over.
What that means is that as we speak, that isn't happening. Is that correct?
It's happening, but you need to increase the speed limit. You need to increase the speed limit. I know Parliament conduct oversight functions over their agency. I am one of the chairmen of the Armed Force Committee. I do my job. But looking at the contemporary increase in crime and criminalities across Nigeria, looking at issue of violent conflict across Nigeria, looking at issue of kidnapping, looking at issue, you cannot equally say that everybody is safe, one, and you cannot equally exonerate even the people as well as the armed force itself. So as a result of that, if there are bad elements in any organization, in parliament, in military, among the people, among the press, definitely as someone that the power to supervise over those agencies is donated to you, you need to do the needful by, one, strengthen the agency to discharge its duty to the best of its ability. Two, putting surveillance over those agencies to ensure that they don't cover up for certain element among themselves who are bringing them, who, if they move 2 steps forward, they bring them 4 steps backward. I think by discharge of robust oversight function, I know why I selected the word robust. There used to be oversight function, but the 9th House of Representatives, at the risk of sounding immodest, the House Committee on Navy, I have done the needful by visiting all naval commands and formations across the country. I know details about issue of pirates, how arms and ammunition, people are using the maritime environment to import arms and ammunition within the country. So when we do this function with the collaboration of few elements among the security agencies who are aiding some of those activities that is against the peaceful coexistence of this country, with equally the collaboration of businessmen in this country. So if you have access by privilege of your office to come across those information, what you need to do is to equally think within the 4 angles of your brain and find what is the right approach that can be done to be able to reduce those things to the barest minimum. And that is why the Security Summit recommended that the bad element among the security agencies need to be fished out. Otherwise, whatever you are going to do to ensure that you guarantee the safety of the people of this country is not going to succeed.
Well, let's see what kind of Stan Labo has to say about that. Let's flip this to Lagos now, gentlemen.
Thanks, Mark. Well, Colonel, you've listened to the Honorable, and we wanted to establish that first, and then come to you and first get your thoughts on, this process, the summit, and then the recommendations that came out. And hearing the Honorable speak about some of the recommendations, the ones that the legislators have to do, the one that the executive has to handle. First, are you confident about this process first?
Well, I would say I am impressed with what they have done. And if we are determined enough as a people, I think to an extent we shall achieve a good number of the issues they have raised, be it at the executive arm or within their own ambit as legislators.
Well, people always refer to events such as this that we've had in the past. I mean, they talk about the laws that we have as well. Some of them that have been amended, and they ask, what we've not really done much with it from their own perspective. So, regarding that, do you still feel that this will be sustained to a large extent?
Well, that was why I used the word "if we are determined," because unfortunately, I don't want to start sounding negative. We should always have hope. It's our country. We have no other country. Unfortunately, we have always, we seem to be people that do so much of talking. After all the talk, at the end of the day, these things, or these reports or whatever, go up to some shelf, and that's where they remain. Then come another, is it the 10th assembly? They start all over again. We are beginning to see a situation whereby assemblies go over to issues which ought to have been addressed nearly 10 years ago. Why? Because they move forward, and at the end of the day, it's either the president is not signing or something has been smuggled in, and there's so much noise, and so it delays the process until at the end of the day, we discover it's late to take certain lines of action, and then it moves on to the next assembly. And things like that.
But what do you think is
with some
responsible
determination.
for that? What do you think is responsible for that? I mean, just so that we can at least, make sure it doesn't happen again.
What else than our attitudinal nature? Nigeria can be a better place if we all decide to change our attitude to work, and even how we relate to each other. It all boils down to attitude. Simple.
When you say
in summary,
attitude, in whose on whose part? Because
on us all, my brother.
Okay.
On us all. Be it I blame the legislators. We also have our own. Come to the military too. We have our own blames. Come to the media. They have their own blames. We are all guilty. Let's all resolve to have a better Nigeria. Simple.
Perhaps that's why the part of the recommendation of the National Assembly is that the executive should encourage and resource the National Orientation Agency and the Federal Ministry of Information to begin a structured strategic communication and orientation campaign. How significant do you think that would be?
Very, very. Very, very. When I read that part, I was really impressed. I was impressed because, you see, the reports we are discussing here, actually, I was part of a team that responded to the call for memorandum from the House. And this was what our committee submitted, a committee of 8 experts, including those in diaspora and so on. The point I'm trying to make is that, look, the whole idea of NOA, taking on that task, which they have, is glowing, it's nice, I'm impressed. But I just pray we have what it takes to implement this. NOA has been dead for long, and that is a very important organ. Very important organ. Because like I said, our problem is attitudinal. Okay? And NOA is the agency that is actually responsible for seeing how these things can be corrected. But we don't seem to be funding that organization enough. And a lot is going wrong with that organization.
Colonel, I'm first curious to find out if some of the recommendations you made in that particular submission made it to this larger recommendation that we have. And also, there talks about security votes, ensuring that people know what was done with security votes, at least after a period of time, and the non-kinetic aspect of this all. But we'll take a look at that when we return from this break. So please, join us again. Former Army officer Colonel Hassan Stanlabo is still with us in our Lagos studio discussing the recommendations from that security summit at the House of Representatives. Well, Colonel, I wanted to find out if some of the recommendations you made it to the larger recommendations that were submitted to the president, because it's quite important to see if this was really representative of the views of Nigerians and the yearnings of Nigerians. So, did they make it?
Yes, a good number of them made it. Such areas has the need for border protection force, the need for forest guards, the need for reforms in the police, addressing specifically areas of training, welfare, and what's it called?
Recruitment.
Welfare and
recruitment.
Yes, recruitment too, and so on. And then the issue of moles, okay? And maybe I should just start off with the issue of modes.
Oh yes, because I mean the Honourable was trying to answer the question about how easy it is to really sort that.
Yeah, it's really not easy. But I was impressed that all the same, they also took us serious on that. It's really not easy, but as an individual, I would want to ask, fine, we are talking about seeing how we can identify and screen out the moles and the forward lines. What have we done? Those ones are still suspects. So we are going to identify and screen. What have we done with those who have already confessed and asked for our apology and even serving at the strategic level? We have hurried to make excuses for them and allow them to remain in our cabinet. By now you should know who I'm referring to. I don't want to start mentioning names.
So what should be done?
Okay, the point I'm making is that let us try to sound very serious. Most when we talk as a government. I expect to see lines of action already taken with the gentleman who is in the cabinet, who has been identified to have relationship with terrorists. Then we begin to talk about these ones, who we are now going to identify and screen and so on. The ones that have confessed, what have you done with them?
Is that by...
Okay.
Are you in any way saying that government is complicit?
Well, if you behave in a manner that gives the impression that you are complicit, like it is said in the Bible, thou hast said it. I didn't say it. Like Christ said. Okay? So that's just it.
You know, one of the recommendations, pardon me, from specifically is ensuring a national transitional justice framework such that the law applies to everybody. The law is no respecter of persons, as it were. And it says that the absence of a unifying transitional justice framework remains a challenge in addressing Nigeria's intractable conflicts. Existing transitional justice framework, like designed to address the Niger Delta or Boko Haram insurgency, will require review towards applying them to the many victims of other security challenges. You followed this fight against insurgency, transitioning to fight against banditry, kidnapping, then farmers, herders clashes, killer herdsmen, and others that have come up. How important is justice really, ensuring that there is commonality, as it were, when it comes to justice?
Justice delivery,
yes, justice
so to
delivery,
speak.
yes.
Yeah, right. I want to, fall in line with that, frankly speaking, because the victims from the Northeast are not being treated well. In fact, those who created their problems are even enjoying better than them. Today we are rehabilitating some of them. They are in fine, good clothes. They are guaranteed 3 square meals, when those in IDP camps are not even guaranteed 3 square meals. Okay? But those who created your problems are here being said, oh, they have surrendered. Oh, we have to rehabilitate them because some protocol, some foreign protocol somewhere, which unfortunately we are a signatory to, by virtue of who we are as a nation, of course. Now here we are giving them certain services, which when we compare such services with what we are giving those who are victims from their own lines of actions, they are not enjoying such. Okay? I keep saying it, and I will continue to say it. As a soldier, I've got no business in you as a soldier on the other side, Boko Haram in this case, bearing arms, telling me you have surrendered. I'm not here to grant you penance. My business is to hurry your what's it called? Your appointment with God, where you ask for penance. And he will now say, my son, I grant you penance. I'm not a reverend father. I'm a soldier.
Isn't that the non-kinetic aspect that we always talk about?
Those are all part of the non-kinetic aspect. For Christ's sake, we've got so much job to do that to start carrying some tons of people from some forest and say they have surrendered. You have the responsibility of feeding them, clothing them, housing them. Where is the resources for all that? I have never believed in taking prisoners of war as a soldier.
Do you think that...
I don't believe in it.
With the policy that you have seen adopted by even state governors, granting some sort of amnesty and all, do you think that has maybe helped in reducing the insecurity incidents?
You and I are all witnesses. What has it happened? What has it yielded us? In Zamfara, did it succeed? In Katsina, did it succeed? The same guys keep coming back. All those guys whom the governors snapped with AK-47 and so on, they're all back, committing the same atrocities.
So what do you think government could do in that wise, because the idea really is, I mean, of the whole pardon and all of that, is to discourage more people going in, and then to encourage those who are already in to come out and join and be reintegrated into society.
We have realized it's not working. Now, can we collectively trail the path of El Rufai, which is my own stand?
Has that been working for him as well?
I will tell you why probably it appears not to be working. Because he's just alone. And so the entire, you can see what's happening in Kaduna now. The entire terrorist or banditry group or whatever are now zeroing in on Kaduna to teach him a lesson. If, however, his style of saying, look, I'm not going to negotiate with these guys, had been adopted by the entire 36 governors, also endorsed by the federal government and so on, where would those guys run to? And then why doing that also? Why doing that also? We also make sure that we are busy implementing Gordon Brown's a safe school program, okay? And things like that, you know, such non-kinetic efforts should be put in place.
But some of the other things, to take the words that Kaudi used earlier in talking about those non-kinetic interventions of dealing with poverty, unemployment, and all of those things, also made it to item 18, actually, of the executive actions that target poverty as a must. That's the way it's put there. Poverty is the main driver for all the insecurity issues currently prevalent across the nation. So we knew this. Clearly, we have focused all of the previous propositions or suggestions to the federal government on fighting the war itself. But targeting poverty would both fight and prevent. How significantly do you think we can that can play any role now, given the wide gap between poverty of poverty and unemployment, especially in the north?
We mustn't give up. We must exploit every advantage coming out of our economic areas of strength: agriculture, mining, tourism, sports, and so on. Areas where we think mass employment could be generated, and so on. Why am I saying agriculture? You don't really need to be too schooled to be involved in agriculture. Agriculture itself has about 23 chains, like we all know. There are certain aspects of it where, I mean, you don't need any form of a Western education to be involved in. And by so doing, we provide some level of employment. You know, same thing too for mining, sports, and so on. Government should be able to exploit all these areas. We shouldn't be discouraged. And when I say this, I'm particularly speaking to my governors up north. We are in a terrible fix up north. Poverty, there's no poverty down south. I've lived in Lagos for quite some while. Everybody's a big man. You go up north. You go up north. That's where you dash somebody 100 naira and she lies on the ground, rolling, thanking God for you. And tears will come out your eyes. I seldom visit the village because of embarrassment.
Well, let me ask Honorable Gagdi this same issue. Poverty is definitely a problem, and all of the figures, both national figures and even global figures, they point in the direction of the fact that we have a very serious poverty problem on our hands. And the recommendation of the House of Representatives, Honorable, is speaking to the fact that we should target poverty as a must. And it's not just to begin the conversation. The challenge has always been that of sustainability. What's the recommendation as part of the, what your recommendation of this point? How do you suggest that government, whether at the federal level or at the state level, should address this? Most certainly, since the presentation was made to the president, there has to be some collaboration with governors. What's the planning or what's the thinking in that regard?
Well, thank you for asking me this and tying me to a particular recommendation of the Security Summit. Because in my opinion, we shouldn't deviate from discussing the core issue, which is the Security Summit of the House of Representatives, to be talking about political issues, I will not agree to venture into that. But to talk about the poverty, which was one of the core recommendations of the Security Summit, I will tell you without any fear of contradiction that we are conscious of our responsibility. I always try to justify my stand based on provision of the law. Section 12(2)(b) of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria spell out clearly that the primary purpose of government is for the welfare and security of the citizenry. And to talk about the welfare, which is key, which is the first thing that the Constitution mentioned, government need to take it serious. Part of the problem why this country is into this security dilemma is because of the rising level of poverty. If government live up to expectation at both states, local government and national level, not if I talk about government, I'm not talking about it is inclusive of present and past government. If in the past and in the present we have been able to live up to expectation by concentrating on the welfare of the people of this country, of the citizen of this country, by providing basic social amenities at the doorstep of the people that empower the government themselves, by building school, ensuring everybody go to school and hospital, ensuring everybody have access to affordable and advanced medical care, by ensuring that that there is equity among the people themselves, definitely we wouldn't be where we are. And that is why the Security Summit did not hesitate to equally hammer hard on the issue of ensuring that the poverty level is being addressed. And to do this, you cannot do it confidently without making an adjustment to the Constitution. And that is why the 9th House of Representatives is serious about constitutional review. To address issue of poverty, you cannot equally do it without adjusting some aspect of our own national legal framework that will provide those, that will provide those support to agencies that are vested with the responsibility of discharging their duties towards reducing poverty level to the barest minimum. And you cannot do that without adjusting the Constitution in such a way that the powers of the House of Assemblies at the different states will be in such a way that they are independent, that again you cannot do it without ensuring that local government is autonomous, where resources voted to each tier of government is sent to the people that are supposed to benefit from those
Honorable.
So some people will say that all of these other things that you're talking about, they're political. I mean, at the end of the day, to get them done, you'll have to play the politics, in-house and also outside of the house. Because
what I mean by political
yeah,
is in the same context you are talking about. But the political I'm talking about that I may not venture into is to talking about Security Summit and mixing it up with actions of government that have no relationship with Security Summit is what I'm talking about. But each action of government is political.
Let me ask you how you intend to, and what are the recommendations with regards to rivalry among security agencies? A number of people know that this is a big deal. It's a big issue. What is the House recommending, and how do you think that, because it was not a joint thing done with the Senate, how will your recommendations be carried along, be carried also by the Senate? I'm sure they're also interested in helping to solve the security issues. Do you have an understanding
in National Assembly?
With the other chamber?
In National Assembly, the House of Reps is not in competition with the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and vice versa. There are laws initiated by Senate. We operate by a cameral system of legislator. House of Reps must not know the process that Senate will initiate a bill and translate it to reps for concurrence. So also some legislation that emanate from House of Representatives, you must not place the Senate on notice before you transmit those legislation that are passed by the House of Representatives to the Senate. They are dealt with based on their merit. Whenever issue emanates that have the potential of storing some defect in this country, from either the Senate or the House of Reps. We deal with them on their merit. If it is finished from the House of Reps, translated to the Senate, Senate will look at it in the merit. Where they have adjustment, they do adjustment, and at the end of the day, conference committees sort out those issues.
But you know why I'm asking you this question? Because we all know that the security situation is a bit urgent. One of the reasons why the House held this particular summit is because they felt pained, and it would seem that previous recommendations had not really held weight. One of the things you sought to do was press home the urgency of the pain which you were feeling and to do something about it. If we know that it's still going to go through a process and we know that something will not become law until both chambers of the National Assembly have assented to it, the question will be, did you have an agreement, did you have an understanding with the Senate to say, look, if we do bring this here, how quickly will you be able to attend to it, considering the urgency of the situation that faces us? That's the question I'm asking.
Yes, the Senate are conscious of the security situation in Nigeria too. They have priority. National Assembly, 9th House of Reps, have agreement among ourselves.
So quickly,
that security issues.
So quickly speak to the issue of rivalry then.
Yes, rivalry. That's why we are addressing this security summit came up last month, and from last month till yesterday, the House of Representatives have initiated 6 bills. These bills are geared towards solving the interagency rivalry among the security agencies in the country. And the bill have passed second reading yesterday. If we are not conscious of the existences of the security problem, I don't think there has ever been a bill that within 30 days passed through first reading and was debated to pass through second reading within 30 days. Those bills are the amendment to the Armed Forces Act. Those bills are the amendment to the Police Act. Those bills are the amendment to the control of small arms and light weapons, ECOWAS convention, and trying to ratify the treaties to make them law and establish agency that monitor the control of the purification of small arms and light ammunitions in Nigeria. And again, those bills are trying to strengthen the Economic and Financial Crime Commission Act to function effectively and bridge gaps between the existing law, where the law seems not to give the powers, the legitimate powers, to all those agencies to discharge their duties to the best of our ability to address. Let me give you a good example with the military, whose agencies I supervise. Can you say in the past there is a collaboration between perhaps the Army and the Air Force in the discharge of their function in the Southwest or in the Northwest and Northeast? Can you say there is an absolute coordination between the police and the army or the military? You are aware of the kidnapping in one of the states in the north, in Taraba, where an army officer, checkpoints and police, you know what those, because of interagency rivalry and because there is no collaboration. We have started to see in the existing laws, law establishing the armed force, law establishing the police force, law establishing the economic and financial...
Can you tell us, sorry to interrupt you, Honorable, can you tell us in more concrete terms what this law on trying to solve interagency rivalry is saying?
Yes.
What is it saying in essence?
It's saying that, one, we must define clearly which agency is the lead intelligence agency in the country. We must define clearly which agency should conduct what operation at what point, and what are the supporting agency. No agency should not claim like one. In terms of internal security, each agencies want to intercept phone calls of citizens. Is that supposed to be allowed? That police does that? That National Office of the National Security Advisor does that? That National NIA does that? No. We will be exposing the citizen of this country to political attacks. Those are the things that we must sit as a parliament to ensure that we streamline those laws and define clearly whose responsibility is that of the armed force, and what responsibility is that of the civil defense, and what responsibility is that of immigration. When, and again, equally define at what point do you need a general consensus of the operations coming together, and who leads those security agencies in terms of discharging what function from what. And we are doing our best to address those ones.
Well, Honorable, we'll definitely keep tabs on what is happening in the House with regards to those particular bills, and also how that it will eventually translate to some of the, to solving some of the security conundrums that we found ourselves. Well, we have to thank you very much for coming on Sunrise City this morning and shedding light on the recommendations that were submitted to the president. Hopefully, we should see some action on the part of the executive. Thank you for coming on the program this morning.
Thank you.
Honorable Yusuf Gagdi is the chairman, House Committee on Navy. And I'll flip this over to my colleagues in Lagos. Gentlemen.
Well, thanks, Mark. But I'll close the moment with Colonel Stanlabo. You know, I'm sport for choice, really, which of the actions to take. But because of time, let me just take the sixth legislative action that was put in that particular recommendation. And it's something quite sensitive because of the context we're in right now. It says, invite representatives from Google, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Twitter to a special dialogue to discuss a voluntary platform regulations framework that centers the need for platforms to have content regulation policies themselves that are well designed and consistently enforced in Nigeria. And it goes on to say that social media analysis has revealed that the Nigerian online space shows evidence of up to 19.5% bot usage, basically saying that programs or scripts were written to artificially increase the visibility of certain kinds of content. And it goes on. I would have loved to take the Honorable up on this because he had some things to say about Twitter. Twitter has been suspended. A lot of people are wondering, Facebook, WhatsApp, what's next? But to what extent, really, do you think this is important in the context of national security?
Anything that would have to do with regulating how much we can talk, how we put it, and so on. I don't know, I'm always averse to it, and that's why I frown seriously at whatever is going on now in the House concerning the media, gagging the media, and so on. First and foremost, I just interpret it as being political. You are in government, you don't want to be criticized, and so you are coming up with laws. You have forgotten you might also tomorrow be in opposition, and that same law you are creating will be used against you.
But don't forget that the Honorable had said one time that the APC will be in power for 100 years. So maybe that's...
We had that from the PDP, that they will be in power for 60 years. So it's no news.
Well, there's so much to unpack in all of that, Colonel. And sincerely, I mean, if you look at about almost 20 executive actions and about 8 legislative actions, most certainly there's quite a lot to unpack. But that's probably work for all of us to do. But for now, we have to thank you for all of your contribution into that summit report, and hopefully we'll be able to take Nigeria to where we want her to go. Colonel Hassan Stanlabo is a former Army officer, and as he said earlier, is still a security consultant. Thank you very much for being a part of the conversation.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much.
Well, one of the big things we talked about that would happen this week is the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. And as at this moment, our understanding is that it's about to get down, as we say. Linda Akiwe, our correspondent in Abuja, is right there now. Linda, right now, I'm wondering what you think the mood is before, during, or after this whole conversation we're about to have.
Good morning. I'm in the National Assembly. The mood here is quite calm. Plenary hasn't started. Nothing is happening right now. Plenary is expected to start in the Senate at about 10:30, then in the House of Reps by 11 o'clock. But preparations are on for a smooth plenary session. Now, yesterday, the Senate and the House of Representatives received the report on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. In a couple of hours, the two houses of the National Assembly will be considering that report clause by clause. Now, this report, as you know, has been highly anticipated for months, as both houses promised to pass this critical bill, which is expected to reform the country's electoral system far ahead of the 2023 general elections to allow INEC prepare for the elections. Now, as you know, some aspects of this bill have been under serious contention, particularly the aspect that has to deal with electronic transmission of results, which some Nigerians have raised an alarm that it has been taken out of the bill. Now, while the House of Representatives has assured that the clause is still part of the bill. The Senate President did say yesterday that some of those accusing the leadership of the National Assembly are misinformed and innocent, while some of them are mischievous and rabble-rousers. Now, he said that yesterday was the first time the report of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill was laid before the Senate, and that the recommendations in the report are the decisions of the Committee on INEC. So whatever will be discussed about the bill will be on the basis of on what has been presented to the Senate.
Interesting, all of that anticipation and everything. The question a number of people will want to ask now is, does that in any way include one or two of those clauses that have been causing some concern here and there? Can you hear me, Linda? I'm wondering if that consideration that you mentioned would in any way include any of those...
Okay, I can hear you.
Yes, any of those conflicting considerations, that the ones that have been out. I don't know if that committee of the Senate, because we've heard from the House of Representatives, but nothing has been said from the Senate about that particular section that's been causing a lot of uproar here and there.
Yeah, nothing has been said particularly on that section. What the Senate President did say was that it would consider what the recommendations in the report as put by the committee. And so, but it's very clear that opposition lawmakers are in favor of the electronic transmission of results. And, you know, we saw the PDP caucus in the National Assembly. They made their position very clear on their stand, that they want this section in the Electoral Act Amendment Bill to be included. And Senator Abaribe, who was speaking on behalf of the caucus, said that they would take very strong steps to ensure that the provision guaranteeing the electronic transmission of results is not tampered with in any form. So in a few hours, when plenary resumes, we will see what these very strong steps, which the PDP caucus talked about during the meeting, will be.
Linda, there is so much to unpack in all of this conversation that we're having. As you said, it's highly anticipated. Sincerely, I can't even wait till 10:30 to get the results. But for now, we have to thank you. Hopefully, we'll be able to take on more before the program is over. We'll take a short break and we'll continue this conversation. Do stay with us.
Taking you to the National Assembly to give you a sense of what to expect today, as the debate is expected to begin on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, at least the report that was laid before both chambers yesterday. So it's a big day, really, and like I said, we're giving it a big coverage, really, because this is very important. It talks about our leadership recruitment process, which is, I mean, the basic foundation of democracy. And this morning we have joining us on the program Dr. Paul Ananaba, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria. He joins us via Zoom on the program. Well, it's good to see you, Dr. Ananaba. I mean, there's been a lot of debate, controversy, and the rest about this particular amendment bill. I'm not sure any other amendment bill has had this, you know, much drama, twists and turns. But listen to the Senate President saying that, you know, those saying they may have changed it are mischievous, misinformed, and rabble-rousers. And he spoke about lobbying if people want a particular section put in or not. What do you make of the totality of the Senate President's statement regarding, I mean, the issues that have been trending?
Thank you, and fellow Nigerians. I do not intend to comment on what the Senate President said. He's a Nigerian, he has his opinion, and he's entitled to that opinion. Beyond that, the Electoral Act is so important to Nigerians. That's why you see a lot of traffic on that point. It's important because it appears to be the heart and soul of political movement in this country. And everything you are going to do will be based on the Constitution and on the Electoral Act. So the experience of Nigerians in previous elections would have been fueling their suspicion and all that. This is not the first time we've tried to amend the Electoral Act. And then in this country, you hear things on rumor, and before you know it, that rumor becomes real. So I don't think Nigerians should be crucified or called names, particularly those who feel uncomfortable with what they are hearing. But specifically, we have witnessed bloodshed, snatching of ballot boxes, violence. You remember in Kogi a few years ago, a lady was burnt, as we were told, in her house, set on fire. So these are things Nigerians do not want to continue to experience. It brings shame and disrepute to this country. We do not want to experience that. So, speaking for myself, I do not think we should be talking about Electoral Amendment Act. I think we need an Electoral Act 2021. That's what I think we should talk about. And since the process has not been concluded, I am of the opinion that we should be talking about a fresh Electoral Act. I say this advisedly. One, the Electoral Act 2010, which is said to be under amendment, has been amended even in 2015, such that you see several lawyers having several different types of electoral acts at a point. So you see, you can pick up an electoral act, the sections are not the same, and all that. The electoral act is so fragile and sensitive that we shouldn't be talking about amending this one. There should be an Electoral Act 2021. And in saying that, we should also be mindful of what Nigerians are complaining about. The bill that is before the National Assembly now intends to increase electoral funding. Now, when you say 15 billion for presidential election, how would the funds be raised? Those who will raise the fund, if it's not the individual that has this 15 billion, are they not going to be giving some privileges in that government, assuming the candidate wins? So if we are on the anti-corruption lane, that anti-corruption lane will be punctuated and perforated by such legislation. If this bill comes to law, you need 5 billion to be a governor. Yes, there will be money bags that will fund it. If it is funded, then he who pays the piper will dictate the tune. I believe that the National Assembly should revisit that point. And again, transmission of results. I commend the National Assembly for putting in the bill electronic voting. But it's not about electronic voting alone. Much of the problem is with the transmission of the results. The transmission of the accreditation, the transmission of the results. It's at that point of transmission that snatching and most of the things are done. So I will urge the National Assembly to take seriously the issue of transmission of results and restore it in a fresh electoral act. A fresh electoral act 2021, period. Not an amendment.
Dr. Nanaba, this conversation about... this conversation about whether we need an amendment or a new one, I recall this is still on even with the Constitution. But, still staying with this Electoral Act amendment bill, you say you prefer an Electoral Act 2021, and you've mentioned a few areas that you think need to be changed. Yes, you've talked about the campaign funding. You've talked about the electronic voting and transmission and the rest. And I recall you said that, I mean, you've noticed that even legal practitioners have different copies of the Electoral Act 2010 that was amended in 2015. I mean, it doesn't call to question where they get their laws from. I mean, these laws are gazetted, so there's an official point you can get the amendments from. So do you think that will solve the question of whether we need a new 2021 Act or an amendment?
Well, I don't want to go into the issue of the government printer and the gazetting process and how many Nigerians will have access to the Gazette. I didn't say that the Gazette was not, or there couldn't be gazetted ones. But the Electoral Act you will buy are the ones you see in the bookshop. And as a practitioner that has been involved mostly in electoral petition, I am speaking from experience. You take up 2 electoral acts the same. That's the point I'm making. So I don't think that the Electoral Act should be, what do we lose by having it as a fresh legislation? But an amendment act will have certain issues. We'll be looking at whether the sections were thoroughly repealed, and if you find out that some even previous acts had not been repealed and they were not repealed by the Amendment Act, those acts will come up and become issues that we will start debating that may deprive the citizens, the candidate of their choice. Remember that we are looking for a just and fair electoral environment. That is what I believe the National Assembly is going for. By the amendment, a new electoral act. And that's my position. And I urge the National Assembly so that we go away from 2010 and its problems. There have been a series of Supreme Court decisions, Court of Appeal decisions, Electoral Tribunal decisions that we will harvest into this process. What is important is not really whether it's, but it is what is the final product. A situation where you are amending and you cannot transmit results. That will be productive, because the transmission is like the Electoral Assembly should go further beyond transmission to say that the result must be 1 hour, not more than 1 hour, be in the website of INEC, and citizens can have access to certified copy within 24 hours. And these practical things, that come up at election tribunals, election petition tribunal, these are practical things. So that those who are applying to write results, to ballot boxes, to do all of this, we know that they are limited. And we begin now to see a better environment, elections, and better results. I think that's what Nigerians are spending their tax money for, in funding the National Assembly to make laws that are in their best interest.
Well, there are many other clauses in that in the bill that's been harmonized today by the committee of the 2 chambers of the National Assembly. But there is another one that's been talked about earlier, and that's about the Electoral Offences Commission. I'm wondering how significant you think that will be in the scheme of things, given that we have some electoral offenses have been committed before elections, during elections, and after elections. So there's that, proposition by the Senate that if you snatch a ballot box, you can go to jail for 20 years. That's just one of several. How significant do you see that commission being proposed, or the bill has been passed by the Senate? How significant do you think, do you see that being in our electoral process entirely?
I see it as extremely significant. Many times we used to compare ourselves with the UK, US, and other. We are Nigerians. We're in Nigeria. And laws must be made to reflect society. I support an electoral offences commission, and not just in words or on the paper. It should be followed with seriousness and strictness. And that's what I'm saying, because a lot of speech was made by a former INEC chairman. We will prosecute, we'll do this. How many people have they prosecuted? I was happy that a professor recently was jailed. Yes, that is just one. So there should be an election offences commission, tribunal, so that people who are professional election offenders will move away from it, and those who stick to it will get the wrath of the law. And even previous crimes can still be prosecuted, because there is no limited time for offenses. A crime is a crime and can be prosecuted anytime. So it is significant. It is what will add impetus to the electronic voting regime we are going into. An electronic voting regime does not mean that it is foolproof and perfect. People are going to do a lot of things to manipulate it in one way or the other, so that we don't bother burden the already way down court system or the election petition tribunals with electoral offenses. Many elections, when election petitions have been affected by the fact that, oh, you allege fraud, you did not prove it. You allege that security agency and this and that did this and that, could not prove it. With the limited 21 days to file your petition, how will you get all that sorted out? So it goes in that, in practice, that the election petition tribunal and election offences commission, working with time-bound proceedings, will give us the best. So I support that. I support that commission.
Yeah, there was something you mentioned earlier in response to Kyrie's question about funding the electoral process, and you raised eyebrows at the increments of electoral funding for the presidential election, for governorship elections, and all of that. But even hitherto, there's been a challenge as to how election funding is monitored. The law that is being amended now, it already provides a monitoring recommendation, but there are questions around how that is even taken on board in the first place. So given that the consideration is there in the law, how do you see the implementation of that particular provision? Because there is the concern, perhaps what the politicians considered was like, look, we were already above the threshold anyway, so let's just increase it and make it legal. So if that is the case, question then is, how do we monitor electoral funding such that we do less money politics and more, of the kind of politics we ought to?
Thank you. That's the point I was making. What has been missing is an election offenses commission. The increase in the funding or the monetary funding is part of electoral offenses that have been created. If you look at it, who would have, under the previous electoral regimes, who can monitor from the House of Assembly to the presidency? Who will monitor the money, the funding? So if there's an electoral offenses commission, that will be part of their duties. And so that if anybody offends, then they will charge such person to court. I will imagine that if there's an electoral offenses commission, the days of money bag in politics will begin to reduce. And that's why we do not get the best of the candidates. It is now get the money anywhere, get your fund everywhere, buy everything, and get into office. And part of the challenge is that now the bill, which I believe that provision should be dropped immediately, is that INEC has no powers in terms of issuing certificate of returns to any person who by force or by some means gets to the electoral office to be sure that to get the certificate to get declared. We saw that happen at the last election, and the tribunals were helpless. INEC was helpless because once it's gone to tribunal, a different regime comes in. So what am I trying to say? It is important that we have this electoral offenses commission. They should look into funding, and they should bring up rules that will be made pursuant to the act that will ensure that funding is strictly monitored. That will bring fresh air. But that should not allow us to now say that if you want to be a governor, you are allowed to raise 5 billion. 5 billion, when you share it among Nigerians, we don't have 5 billion Nigerians. So you will be seeing that even for the money to be raised can be shared on all Nigerians. Let's take 200 million Nigerians, children to adults. If you share it, you can do the mathematics. You have a statistician in channels. I would like him to do the mathematics. You will see that for one state alone, every Nigerian will get some good money. That is what you are giving into one person to go and run an election. And then when he wins the election, you want him to operate by perfect rules. The people who brought the money, the sources of the money that was spent, what will happen to them? Election becomes an investment, and then corruption can no longer be stopped. That is what should be discouraged.
I tried to crunch the figures in my head. I do hope I'm correct, though. I mean, 5 billion naira. If you divide that by 200 million,
I didn't do so much
that's about 25 naira.
So I couldn't get to the figure.
No, it's okay. I tried to do the crunching. If you divide 5 billion by 200 million, that's I think 25 naira
to how
each.
much?
So that's 25 naira each
so
for each citizen.
Every living Nigerian will get 25 naira. I'm talking about one state. Then multiply it by the 36 states and FCT. And then you go to presidency of 15 billion, humongous, times 3.
You know,
so it's
that's that, and I know that conversation is always on, and I think it's quite important. But you heard the Senate president saying that, you know, the National Assembly should not be blackmailed. If people want certain things in that amendment, then they should lobby. And I imagine that these are some of the issues that Nigerians want: electronic voting, talk about campaign funding, and the rest. So the Senate president is essentially saying, well, you need to come to the table, as it were. How do you see that working out, especially because there's overwhelming, you know, reaction from Nigerians?
I don't agree. Let me make my point clear. Lobbying is a professional job. In advanced democracy, there are lobbyists. and lobbying is not a crime. But suddenly telling us about lobbying in Nigeria, we've not been talking about lobbying in that balance. My concern about that comment is that lobbying takes a while. So now that the harmonization is being done today or so soon thereafter, before the National Assembly goes on vacation, when will the lobbying be done? Are we going to do campaign after election? Is that what that is aimed at? If we were to do that, that should have been put forward long time, so that there will be enough time to lobby. I agree with lobbying, but I don't agree with lobbying in this instance as an avenue. In subsequent things, maybe we should have Association of Nigerian Lobbyists, and then we'll take it from there. But for now, not for this Electoral Act. This Electoral Act, I urge that, I urge that the Senate President and all parliamentarians should go the patriotic way,
right,
devoid of lobbying now.
Well,
taking the interest of Nigerian platform.
Maybe we'll need another bill for that association of lobbies, or maybe an agency. But clearly, we'd like to appreciate you so much for your time and sharing your thoughts with us on the program this morning. Dr. Paul Ananaba is a senior advocate of Nigeria, and he's been discussing with us issues surrounding the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, which is, of course, going down today at the National Assembly. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, next, of course, are your own contribution to this program. Today we'll begin with Timi Afolabi's comments email, who says, all we need is an electoral law that guarantees voters' votes are transmitted electronically so that the results from the polling unit are not tampered with in the process of manual transmission, as it is the case presently. The electronic transmission test run done by INEC in Edo and Ondo states is a good testimony for doing away with manual transmission.
Ahmed Shua is on security. Yes, we had a conversation earlier about security. And he says, the report of the Security Summit should be considered. I welcome the idea of creating special units under police, and also I support the withdrawal of escorts and securities from VIPs.
And John Annie has this one. He says, I think we've had enough of this security summit. What this country needs now is a lot of action. Nigerians continue to feel unsafe, yes, with rising cases of kidnappings and killings. I believe even without the summits, the government should rise up to the occasion to provide security and, going forward, welfare.
Dayak Nyam is talking about the same issue, says it is one thing to write reports and another to implement conclusively. It is in this same country that bills are passed by the Senate or reps just for the executive to turn it down. So, how are we sure the recommendations of this report would be implemented, please?
You know, the please at the end. Well, Moses Adeni Algo says, I agree with the suggestion forward by the House, but the most important one for urgent attention is the one on federal character application. That's the mail from Moses. Goes on to say, we have seen many one-sided appointments in federal agencies, for example, NMPC and security agencies, where people from particular sections of the country dominate. Well, this brings hatred towards these people, and their people in other parts of the country are subject of attacks. It does not allow national cohesion. Either we like it or not, the country is seriously polarized along ethnic lines, and it stems from the issue of wrong application of federal character.
Well, we do know that the House of Representatives is currently investigating one issue raised by a member on the floor with regards to federal character. Let's see what comes out of that. But Ikedi Chris has this one on EFCC's Eagle Eye app. It says, I am only concerned about the EFCC chairman's comments concerning people who reported or give malicious information to the EFCC on economic crimes. He says, will the EFCC do a thorough professional investigation on reports? Secondly, wouldn't some EFCC staff disclose sources of information to super rich, fraudulent Nigerians, which will turn around to, or who will turn around to hunt the whistleblower? Does the EFCC not have allowances for their staff? Why can't they provide reward or stipends for whistleblowers? I think that's the question Kaide was asking earlier as to whether or not the fact that there is no reward on this one puts a dampener on this particular app. Well, it's a valid question, and I'm sure that some people are also asking that question as well. I think that people should generally be able to take satisfaction from the fact that they have done something good. If some investigation is done on it and it turns out to be true and those people are brought to book, one should be able to take satisfaction from the fact that something good has come out from an action that one initiated. But we'll see how that goes and how it is received by Nigerians. In the meantime, thank you so much for sending in your comments and your mails. We don't take them for granted. Thank you for watching this morning. I'm Maokwe Ogunyusu.
Well, for me, I've already downloaded the app and I'm ready to blow the whistle now, take the pictures. I'm Kaide Okikele.
No doubt the genuine concern of AKD Chris, I'm pretty sure that government will note it because indeed it is significant. It could discourage a number of people. But then, as Marco said, we'll see how it goes. Amaya Makinde, have a wonderful rest of your day.